What is going on, everybody? I hope you're enjoying your Monday today. This is NYG Jeffy T 3285, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be going back in the day to talk about a New York Giants player that maybe a lot of fans forget all about, but he was easily one of the big reasons why we won the Super Bowl in 2007, and he was actually one of the best, most underrated players for this time frame and for the success the New York Giants had in that specific time. And I'm talking about Steve Smith, the wide receiver out of USC, second round pick in 2007. Steve Smith came into the league as a guy where he was a route running technician, a guy that would be able to beat you off the line, beat you in press man coverage with his ability to get in and out of his routes and the way he was able to run absolute crisp routes. Didn't have the most speed, top end speed. He wasn't able to separate as easily with his natural gifts. His reason and his ways of creating separation was always due to his superb route running that he was able to do. Steve Smith ended up having a 6-year career which spanned 4 years with the New York Giants from 2007 to 2010, and also a stint with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2011 and with the St. Louis Rams at the time in 2012. Steve Smith was a guy that came into his rookie season, and unfortunately he suffered an injury early on in the 2007 season, which caused him to miss at least 10 games in that beginning season. So he didn't really get off to the best of starts with the New York Giants. But when Steve Smith was able to come back and play that number 3 receiver role, that slot receiver slash like security blanket over the middle, Steve Smith immediately started to make his impact on that team. Steve Smith came into that game, made some clutch catches, and helped alleviate a lot of the attention that was going towards Amani Toomer and Plexico Burress at the time, and quickly started to develop a quick rapport with quarterback at the time, Eli Manning. It seemed like wherever Eli Manning needed Steve Smith to be, Steve Smith would go. He was always that security blanket for Eli. And it actually turns out that Steve Smith was one of the big key factors in that passing game that helped the New York Giants go into the 2007 playoffs and start going on that run. I know Amani Toomer was the big play receiver at that time during the playoffs. Plexico Burress was still being hampered by an ankle injury and a foot injury at the time, which slowed him down. But Steve Smith quickly started to make his presence known after scoring a touchdown against Tampa Bay and making some key plays against Dallas. And also, a lot of people talk about Plexico Burress having the biggest catch in the Super Bowl. No. It was actually Steve Smith who had the biggest catch in that game when he was able to catch a third down play and not only make the catch, but he had the awareness, even as a rookie, to try to get the extended yardage to get over the first down marker and get that key first down, which eventually set up the game-winning touchdown pass to Plexico Burress a play later. So Steve Smith, in 2008, he was still relegated to the number 3 receiver role because we still had Plexico Burress and Amani Toomer at the time. But we all know what happened. That team had a lot going for them. They were the number 1 team in the NFL at that time. Steve Smith was steadily still making contributions as a number 3 receiver. Wasn't yet to, take over as a number 2 or even number 1. But after what we know happened with the Plexico Burress incident, and Amani Toomer was clearly starting to go big time on the decline, and Steve Smith had to make himself into the number 1 receiver, he wasn't quite ready for that role yet. And unfortunately, the Giants got bounced in the first round of the playoffs that year by, ironically, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, going into 2009 is when Steve Smith really started to break out as a wide receiver, and people really got to see how talented this guy was in the NFL. Steve Smith, his route running was something that New York Giants fans had not been accustomed to seeing. This guy, his ability to get in and out of his routes were absolutely phenomenal. The way he was able to juke defenders, the way he was able to run down streak down the middle of the field and make the tough contested catch over the middle, even taking big hits and still making the big time catches. Steve Smith was even able to take it deep sometimes and make the big catches, but he was also known as that guy that whenever Eli Manning needed to have a play done, Steve Smith was always that guy that Eli Manning would look for and would go to over the middle, on the sideline, wherever he needed Steve Smith to be, Steve Smith was. And that's the guy, and he quickly emerged as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in 2009 when he was able to go out there and catch a New York Giants all-time record 108 catches for 1,220 yards and scored 7 touchdowns that year, earning himself a Pro Bowl nod for the New York Giants, which they've never had a Pro Bowl receiver before. Steve Smith was the first wide receiver to ever earn a Pro Bowl spot. Not Amani Toomer, not Homer Jones, not some of the other great receivers that were part of the New York Giants legacy. It was Steve Smith. This guy was the definition of a chain mover, of a route running technician, where he didn't have the top end speed. He didn't have the abilities to have the breakaway speed or in and out quickness like other receivers with more talent were able to have. But what Steve Smith was, is he was a guy that was so crisp in his route running. He was such a technician that he was able to create the amount of separation he was because of his ability to be a great route runner in and out of his breaks and create that much needed separation over the middle and sometimes make defensive backs look absolutely silly, whether it was in the slot or even on the outside. And what Steve Smith did is he made the slot receiver position more of a big-time position going into the NFL because it was mainly 2 wide receivers on the outside. That was the main base offensive scheme. And Steve Smith was one of those receivers when he came into the NFL that made the slot receiver a more primary focus for the offense than before. And there's a lot of credit. I'm going to send out a shout-out to my buddy Big Pat Sports Talk, who is also the one that brought up this story that Steve Smith was one of the guys in the NFL, even before Wes Welker, who we all know what he did for the New England Patriots and for the Miami Dolphins and for the Denver Broncos. But Steve Smith was one of the guys that started the trend of having a great slot receiver being the guy to open up things over the middle and even being able to take the top off the defenses. Now, unfortunately, Steve Smith, in 2010, he was looking to replicate what he was able to do in 2009, but unfortunately, Steve Smith, during the middle of the 2010 season, suffered a strained pectoral muscle against the Seattle Seahawks, and then when he was able to come back after a couple games rehabbing his injury, he unfortunately suffered a devastating patella tendon injury to one of his knees, which sidelined him for the rest of the season, and after that, he was not the same player as he was. And the Giants, unfortunately, they didn't re-sign him because they already had a couple of good receivers on the roster, like a Victor Cruz, Hakeem Nicks, Mario Manningham. We all know what they did going into the 2011 season and beyond. But Steve Smith, unfortunately, he was not re-signed by the New York Giants. He ended up having a small stint in the Philadelphia Eagles. Didn't do much over there. Even tried again in St. Louis in 2012 and didn't really have much there. And then he called it quits in 2013. Steve Smith was one of those guys that he revolutionized the slot receiver position for NFL players nowadays, and he was able to turn that position and help turn that position into what it is now. And a Victor Cruz was able to even add a more dynamic presence when he eventually took over for Steve Smith at the slot receiver position for the New York Giants from 2011 to 2016. And you have other guys, even like Sterling Shepard, who has been the Giants slot receiver primarily from 2016 till present day. You have Kadarius Toney, who has also been a slot receiver for the New York Giants from last year going into this year. And then the New York Giants just drafted Wan'Dale Robinson, another guy that's projected to be a slot receiver. But if it wasn't really for a guy like Steve Smith, who was really the first guy in the New York Giants that really was a guy that revolutionized that slot receiver position and made it more of a premier position going forward, that who knows what the NFL could be like today, and who knows what the Giants offense could have been like, because Steve Smith, that guy was a difference maker, and it's unfortunate Giants fans don't talk about him and give him the recognition that he deserves, because him and Eli Manning had an amazing connection together. Steve Smith was one of those guys that would just go out there, make the tough catch, always be that security blanket out there, and when you needed number 12 to go out there and make a play, normally number 12 would go out there and make the play, including the biggest catch in the Super Bowl in 2007 and having the most career catches for a New York Giants receiver of all time in 2009 and being the first New York Giants receiver to earn a Pro Bowl position in the storied history of that franchise. So I just want to make this quick little video just giving the respect that this guy deserves, Steve Smith deserves for the New York Giants. I know he didn't have a long career due to injuries and unfortunate circumstances, but Steve Smith was a very, very big part of that New York Giants success during 2007 to 2010. And I think Giants fans should go out there, if you haven't already, go watch the tape of what this guy could do on the field, because he was the definition of a route running technician. And for younger receivers that pride themselves on becoming great route runners, go put in a tape, especially of 2009, and go watch Steve Smith of the New York Giants and how to be able to run and learn to become a great technical wide receiver in terms of your slot wide receiver route running techniques. So I just want to make this quick video. If you like what you see, please hit the like button in the bottom. Subscribe, if you haven't already, to NYG Jeffy T 3285 for more New York Giants breaking news updates and content. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Monday evening. And let's see what the New York Giants can do coming up. And just please, if you haven't already, go check out Steve Smith's tape. This guy was amazing at the time, and he deserves the respect he's due. Have a great rest of your Monday. Take it easy. And remember, let's go New York Football Giants.